Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Publisher Hangout on Air. We'll just give it a few more minutes and wait for some people to arrive before we start. Welcome. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Hangouts on Air for the Publisher. For publishers, we are now broadcasting to you live from Dublin. Today, we're going to be talking about a few different optimization techniques within your site as well as your mobile site, in order for you to be able to maximize the monetization of your site. We'd like to welcome everyone today. I'd like to maybe just give it a few more seconds before everyone joins us, and we can start the session. So today it's maybe good to give you some context and some administration for the Hangout on Air today. So first of all, I'll be just going over a few of the topics within the microsite that you're at right now. You also have the capability of attending down the link, which is down underneath the Hangout, and also at the end of the presentation, you can download the free ebook with a free guide to optimizing your site, where you can also find more tips and more suggestions on how to make better practices and better monetization techniques from your site. Furthermore, I'd like to just also to talk about the fact that you can ask questions. These questions will be answered directly by me after the presentation. So feel free to participate in any conversation that you like, or if you have any questions that you might like to have answered, feel free to ask those at any point in time. And after the presentation, we'll be sure to figure those out. Furthermore, we also have, this is one of a few series that we'll be doing in the coming period. So at the end of this presentation, feel free to also take a look at the other two upcoming sessions that we've booked for the first week of March. Those are specifically focused towards ad serving with our free monetization tool, DFP, or double-click for publishers. If you are unaware of using DFP and haven't used so in previously, feel free to join our free Hangout on Air, discussing best practices around using double-click for publishers and also using ad serving, and how to create more substances from that. If you have an ad server, of course, there are many different ways of monetizing and also optimizing within DFP that we'd like to share with you. So we'll be doing a session on yield optimization and yield management, where you can best join that session on dynamic allocation. So all in all, I think we're going to have a great session today. I think we have enough viewers at the moment, so I think we're ready to start. So I'd like to give you just a bit of context around the topics that we'll be covering today. First of all, we'll be talking for about 15 minutes. I'll talk about website best practices. This will include the different ad formats that we have capable to put on your site, and also different techniques in order to increase your active viewability, which I'll be talking about further. Secondly, we'll go into the second part, which is monetizing mobile. I realize a lot of you have been having issues with this lately, at least in the previous past. And we'll be looking at some different formats in that. And finally, we'll be finishing off with other monetization techniques around AdSense for search, AdSense for games, and AdSense for videos, which we'll be touching upon lightly. To give you some insight into me, it might be interesting. My name is Maurits Versteeg. I've been working here at Google for about 2.5 years now. I personally manage the Dutch market, the Benelux market, but this Hangout on Air is put together for Northern Europe as an attempt to be able to touch more people at a scalable approach. My history here at Google has primarily been within the buy side, and this is also something that I'd like to take with me during this Hangout on Air to give you some insight into the way that advertisers are thinking about targeting display ads, and more specifically targeting mobile ads, because I think that a lot of work can be done here for all of us as a community to be able to optimize on mobile and to make it better for the entire ecosystem to grow. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. We'll start with the presentation here. So this is obviously geared towards how to make more money from your site. I think it's good to have a bit of a disclaimer. Any suggestions here, of course, are not guaranteed. These are simply suggestions, and we do see from studies and from monetization and betas that these generally do have a positive impact on sites, but of course, there is an optimization process behind that you would need to follow in order to maximize your impact. So first of all, when we talk about the first part of the presentation, it's about websites and ad best practices. So we'll be talking about improving your user experience, ad placement, coverage, ad sizes, and increasing your ad competition. But before we get into that, I think it's important to take a quick look at active viewability, because this is a metric that's come by more and more. And I think that it's important to get a good, strong view about what's happened in the market until this point and the reason why we're discussing these points today. So active viewability is a metric that's recently been put into your AdSense account and is also actively looked at by advertisers, because in 2011, the AIB, the ANA, and the 4As have joined forces in order to make digital measurement a thing of the past. So they wanted to basically create a report or to make sure that online advertisement is sold based on viewable impressions and not on measured impressions. So what that means is in 2011, or at least still now today, but this is something that's growing, is measured impressions were something that were impressions that were just filtered into a site, but weren't actually seen by the user. And the AIB released a report stating that too many impressions were being measured but weren't actually being seen. And so these three parties, they came together to create this joint force and to create a document called the State of Viewability Transaction 2015, where their goal was to get at least 100% viewability. And last year it was announced that 100% viewability was not an achievable goal, but 70% viewability was. And so I think that this is important to take into consideration, that active viewability is something that advertisers are actively striving for. So advertisers who are actively striving to get a higher viewability metric, or at least get their ads in the view of users, is something that's important to them and will also result in something that's important to you, because at the end of the day, advertisers are paying money to be able to show ads on your site. So the more that we play in on the dynamics of advertisers, the more money you would potentially be able to make from your site. Of course, very important to take into consideration. So when we look at the first topic, it's improving user experience. I think the most important here is to consider that you opt in for a responsive site. We've seen across responsive sites, and this is something I'll get into a little bit later, also with mobile, is that CPMs are higher because ads are better placed. The usage of users is higher because they have a better user experience, and you can always make it faster and better. So this is something that I think is, of course, the foundation of being able to make your site and your user experience across platform uniform for your users. Secondly, and I think that this is when we get into the nitty-gritty of increasing your CTR and increasing your active viewability, it's about improving your ad placements. Quite often we see that that publishers are putting ads above menus or in places where users will generally scroll away quite quickly and will never actually be able to see the ad. To reiterate, active viewability is measured where an ad is shown 50% of the ad is shown for more than 1 second. So if you consider how people are traveling across your site, also consider how many of your ads are actually being shown 50% of the ad for 1 second in place. So if you see that something is below the fold, place it above the fold so that you get that viewability metric there in place. Also, what we can do is increase our coverage. Sometimes I notice that my publishers have only 2 ads in place or 1 ad. Google policy allows you to have 3 ads. Now, of course, we're not saying to bombard your site full of ads, because user experience in our eyes, just as it is in yours, is the most important thing that we can strive for. But of course, there are very best practices around creating a better coverage on your site through more ads on the site. So make sure that you have 3 ads which are placed in strategic places so that they're well seen and well in place. Finally, ad sizes. This is a very important topic because I think essentially what we can do with ad sizes is increase your RPM. I'll get into responsive ad units in a little bit, but if you're using static ads, what you could potentially do to increase your RPM drastically is to increase the size of your ad. So if we see from 200 to 200 by 200 to 300 by 250, we'll immediately create more demand for your site because advertisers on display ads are generally looking for branding content where they can be well inside and have big ads to be able to show their users. The same applies to you. If you can have bigger ads, we can assume that you can also target advertisers that are interested in having higher branding budgets and therefore be more visible on your site and be able to target your site more specifically with larger formats. Funny, when we look at, for example, the open auction, which we're all competing in and where your ads are being trafficked from programmatically, you have to consider a room full of people who are all bidding on your ad space at one time. And now imagine that if you were to block certain parts of that competitive room, you would also be able to block people that might have a high CPM or a high bid that they'd like to place on your site. So in order to increase competition on your site, it's important to consider how many people are you allowing to target your site and to be able to bid on it. If you have a lot of blockages on your site, blocking, for example, text ads or image ads, you'll be blocking a large portion of the advertisers that might want to bid on your site with high CPMs. So definitely take a look at your blockings. Once again, see if all those blocks are actually noteworthy or that they're really a substantial investment in the user experience. It might be better for you to unblock categories and simply block advertiser profiles themselves. You'll then be able to get much higher CPCs and be able to make more money. So that was a part about how to optimize on your site. I think now it's important to move over to the next part of the presentation, which is optimizing on ad sizes. So again, we can look at the different formats that could be relevant there. So we have a few interesting concepts outside of just the trafficked ads from the open auction. And the first of which is matched content. If you haven't heard of matched content before, it's interesting for me to tell you about it. What it basically is, it's an ad that links back to your site. So if you look at your Google Analytics or you look at the way that ads are being trafficked on your site or the way that users are interacting with your site, if you see that you have very low page views, this might be an interesting product for you because what it essentially does is that it shows display ads that will link back to previous pages on your site. Now, this is not recommended for all sites, but it is recommended for sites with a lot of content where you want to keep people coming back and revisiting different pages. And maybe even if you have an affiliate or different websites with the same type of content, to be able to filter them in between sites and be able to increase the number of page views and thereby also increase the RPM that you make on the site. So if we move to the next topic, that's the Google Customer Survey. The Google Customer Survey is a new product by Google, whereby we allow advertisers to be able to do surveys or to create market research from the totals from their marketing efforts. So basically what we can do here is instead of showing a display ad, we will show a series of questions that users will be able to answer, and an advertiser or a market research would pay on the question. So if you can imagine that someone might be visiting your site and you have a site that's geared towards maybe entertainment, that has people at a state of mind where they would be interested in answering questions or answering research questions, this might be an interesting option for you. We see that the RPMs on this product is actually quite high. So definitely something that you can talk to your mobile optimization specialist about. Once again, this is a product that is in beta and is not meant for all publishers as of yet, but definitely something that is interesting if you'd like to reach out and see if this is something for you. Thirdly, we have the link units. These are links that are basically trafficked from Google search. They enable the same type of targeting, so they do target contextually and also on interest-based targeting for your users. So you quite often see it's a small ad, it won't take up a lot of space, and does generally work very well because Google's algorithm works so well that it can target very specifically to the interests and the context where the user of your site is in at that moment. So if you have any leftover space on the site, it might be interesting for you to take advantage of that, and to make sure that those that space on your site is also utilized and monetized. So now we've moved into the second main section of the presentation, which is the mobile monetization, one of my favorite topics. So what I'd like to do today is also give you some more insight into how advertisers are thinking about mobile, maybe why the RPMs are a little bit lower, and what we can do together to be able to monetize your mobile site a bit more effectively and to be able to get more money from your mobile site. So what I think is essentially most important is to consider mobile and the budgets that are spent there. So on this infographic here, we can see that 24% of users' time is spent on mobile, but staggeringly, only 8% of advertiser budgets are spent on mobile. Now, the discrepancy between these two numbers is of course quite obvious. The reason for that is multiple reasons. First of all, cross-device conversion tracking is something that is not capable within the AdWords interface as of yet. This is something that's being worked on very hard, and it's something that we will always try to strive for. But essentially, what we see advertisers do, and what I saw in my previous job many times, is that there's a disbelief by advertisers that mobile works for their conversions. And this, of course, is at the top of mind for every advertiser, where they're considering, where is my marketing budget going, and how am I being able to make a return on investment in the investment that I make into a certain platform. If you as an advertiser see that you have an ROI on your desktop inventory, but a negative ROI on your mobile inventory or the mobile traffic that you're buying, then of course it's a logical suggestion to say, this is not working for me, and that's why I'm going to turn off my bids on mobile. Also a reason why you'll be able to see a lower RPM on your mobile platform, and possibly even a declining RPM over the past 2 years. Because what we've seen in 2014 is that mobile queries on Google have surpassed desktop queries. That means more people are interacting on the mobile space, and more people are involved with mobile, to the point that there's a shift from desktop to mobile. And I'm sure you've probably noticed it in your own user experience, where you've been using your mobile more often than you have in the past. The user experience is much more fluent now than it used to be. And therefore, people and users are stepping over to mobile, while advertisers haven't made that same step yet. So what we could potentially do is look at, okay, what is important to advertisers at that point in order to target mobile, and how can we best position you for that? Coming back to the conversion tracking, the simple fact that advertisers are incapable of tracking conversions doesn't mean that all advertisers have stopped using mobile as a platform. The ones that have still continued to use it from a branding perspective. They want to stay top of mind. From a see, think, do, users are usually at their mobile in the orientation phase, where they're looking at different content, they're trying to figure out what they want, and finally they'll go over to desktop to convert. The advertisers that are targeting the see phase of a user experience, where your users are on your site engaging with your content and also being targeted by the ads from advertisers, is an important step, because it means that bigger banners, bigger ad formats are going to be more important to advertisers, because they can target more specifically on branding content and therefore have a bigger impact from the marketing spend that they've put in. So if we look at this from a practical standpoint, how does this look? 17% of users in EMEA access the web through their mobile phones, 21% globally. So this, of course, is an interesting statistic. 74% of users say that they prefer or would return to mobile sites. So this is already leading us to a point where we can say, mobile sites, responsive sites, multi-screen viewing is, of course, important to your users, because at the end of the day, they will stay on your mobile site for a longer period of time, interact with more ads, be targeted by more branding advertisers if they have a good experience. And this is what I'd like to talk to you about today, is improving the experience on mobile. So first of all, we'd like to talk about building a multi-screen viewing experience, building responsive design. We can see that the CPMs on responsive designs are 15% higher, time spent on site is 14% higher, and the bounce rate is about 6% lower. When we look at the different formats that you have to be able to introduce multi-screen options, you've got 3 different ways of tackling this. First of all, you can create a separate mobile site. The pros to this are that it's fully customized, it's easier to make changes, and you can, the disadvantages though are that you have multiple URLs. Of course, it's difficult to be able to scale the content in an easy and effective way. Secondly, we've got the responsive mobile design. The pros to this, of course, that you have a fully customized device experience. This is one of the more powerful designs that you can use. The content parity and the no redirection is, of course, another pro there. Cons that it's heavy resource for initial implementation. So, of course, I can imagine if you're a small site and you're starting up, this is a difficult way to do it. But, of course, there are many vendors that will help you with this. I have a list of them at the end of the presentation to be able to help you with that. And finally, we have the dynamic serving, which of course also has a single URL for a piece of content. It's easier to make changes and has a faster loading time. Another practical step that you can take in order to maximize the impact on your Google page is to use the Google Developer Tool, which is the Google Page Speed Insights. You can find it just by typing in Google Page Speed Insights into Google, then typing in your URL and clicking Analyze. Here you'll be able to find very practical examples of what you can do to maximize the impact and the user experience on your mobile. Finally, we'll be going into the different mobile ad units that we can use. Of course, there are quite a few, and it does come back to what we were talking about earlier, is increasing active viewability and also promoting your sites to be able to be targeted by branding advertisers on mobile. So if I look at the first step here, which is the mobile ad best practices, our first example would be to say the 320 by 100 can be replaced by the 320 by 50, or sorry, the other way around, the 320 by 50 can be replaced by the 320 by 100. Bigger ad units are usually targeted by advertisers who want to have that branding impact. The same applies to any ad unit that's the 320 by 100. It might be interesting for you to look at the 300 by 250 and try to put these in places where they are above the fold, they are seen, and they are viewable. So these are best practices that essentially gear towards being able to get higher viewability or bigger ads with a higher viewability. This is an interesting step here. We have a new release. It's the 300 by 600. It's just been released by policy. So this is, of course, a very big ad unit and would work at the end of a site, at the end of a mobile page. Do not place it, though, in between content, because we do notice that there are invalid clicks and it is just a bit too big to be able to place in content. So this is an ad unit that works very well at the end of a page where people scroll down and are then targeted by the branding advertisers to be able to click on through. I just want to quickly reiterate about the 300 by 250. This is one of our most powerful ad units. We see that the CTR on this is about 2 times higher than the 320 by 50 and 2 times higher than the 320 by 100 and a staggering 87% higher RPM. So definitely, if you're interested in taking these mobile best practices, do consider the 300 by 250 ad units, as these are some ad units that have been working very well for the EMEA and NACE market. Finally, for mobile, we also have a responsive ad unit. This can be placed on desktop and on tablet and on mobile, but on mobile it works very well, because what we can essentially do is by placing an ad unit, it will be responsive to the way that the user is working with your site or your or tablet or a mobile design, and it will find an ad that will fit within that the responsive ad unit with the highest CPM. So you're basically guaranteed of any ad unit that has the highest CPM at that time. So this, of course, is something that we can use to optimize and to find for you the best ad unit that will work at that moment in time, and also to maximize on the CPMs from any ad unit coming in. So those are the topics that we have on mobile and on desktop. Now, of course, we have a few more steps to take, and I just want to quickly touch upon the different monetization techniques that we have. First of all, we'd like to talk about AdSense for search. This has picked up a lot of steam lately and is of course something that works very well, simply because Google works very well. The algorithm is of course one of a kind and is very well developed. So essentially what we could do here is you can integrate Google custom search on your site. If you have a search tab or you have something similar, where if users search, they not only search content within your site, but will also be targeted by Google ads that are related to the search query that they've placed within that site. The revenue share on this is about 50-50. So consider that the bids on search are generally much higher than they are in display, because your advertisers are targeting intent instead of user behavior or even search behavior. So of course, intent is something that advertisers are interested in. If you can show that you're looking for Nike shoes within your custom search bar, advertisers will be interested in targeting this, and the rev share is of course the 50-50. Secondly, we have AdSense for games. If we have any gaming users that are participating in the broadcast today, then definitely take a look at this, because gaming is of course something that's been growing and growing for the past couple of years. AdSense for games is 3 different ad units that we can use. First of all, there's a standard non-skippable video pre-roll. This will be just put in front of the ad unit. Secondly, with TrueView, you probably recognize this from our YouTube ads, where you have 5 seconds to skip the ads. After 30 seconds, advertisers will pay. You'll also make your money. And finally, we have the full slot, which is a text, image, or rich media ad, which can be put in the frame there. Finally, we have AdSense for video. These are also 3 different ad units. We've got the video, the overlay, which is non-linear, and the full slot, which is linear. So of course, we in the future we'll be doing more Hangouts on air based on these 3 topics in order to maximize the monetization for users that are in line with that, and hopefully we will be able to get a few steps going from there. So all in all, that was the presentation, and we just want to quickly finally make a checklist for you there. So as a final checklist, I think essentially we've talked about what is important to advertisers, and I'd like to just give you that key takeaway here, is to have you start thinking about an advertiser, to grow the active viewability, to be able to get more trust and buy-in from advertisers, so that they start spending more of their budget on display, and be able to maximize your CPMs and for you and the internet to make more money off your site. So basically, switch to bigger ad units. Allow text and image ads, which essentially is limiting block categories and also blocking ad networks. Place more ads above the fold so that they're higher viewability. Don't put ads above the header. Also place ads near viewed content. Make sure that where your users are viewing, ads can be seen, and monetize with different products, and try to experiment with as much as possible, and increase the user experience on your site overall. Finally, for mobile, we have the 320 by 100 instead of the 320 by 50. If you have either of those and you think, okay, I'd like to go for more for the branding advertisers, think about the 320 by 2 or the 300 by 250. This is a 87% higher RPM and 2 times higher CTR. Then we also have the 300 by 600 ad unit, which is at the end of any mobile content. And finally, we have the responsive ad units that will find the highest CPM for you. And then try to experiment with different things on that site as well. So now we have a few more things that have also been communicated within the final guide document. Here we have a list of the vendors. If you'd like to go for a more responsive site, feel free to take a screenshot of this site here as we speak, and feel free to reach out to those whenever you feel ready. So now we'd like to finish off with the questions. And I'd like to thank you for your attendance. If you have any questions, feel free to answer those within the link below, and I'd like to take it over to there. Right now, I have 3 questions. Before we get into the questions, I would like to ask you all to maybe download the ebook. There is very relevant information in there. It'd be great for you to also follow up, and we have more links in there that'll help you to maximize the site. There is also an attendance on there, and it would be very valuable for us to get the feedback whether or not you've participated, and if this is something that you'd like to have continue further in the future. So do please download the book, or at least to click the link there. We'd be very much appreciative. So now to get to the questions, we have one here by Jochem Ketcher. I hope I'm saying that right. Simple question: is there a site too much AdSense in? Is there on my site too much AdSense in comparison to content? I think that this is a very specific question. Let me take to the user himself. I can maybe follow up with Jochem later, or let me take a look there. Well, you have 3 ads on your site, Jochem. You can put 3 ads on the site. Wherever you want to put those ads is completely up to you. I wouldn't say that there's too much content on here. It looks perfectly fine. I think, it's of course, I think at the end of the day, it's important to consider that, you experiment. I think that this is an ad that looks very, very well placed. You come in, you see the ad here. Furthermore, I see a bigger ad here. Consider though that now you've put this in a div here that could be a little bit bigger, or you could have experimented with this in a different way. So I think that the question is not so much is there too much ads. I don't think it does look like it's intrusive in any way. I think it looks fine. Here though, right, if I scroll down the site, I notice that there's no ads on the site here except for when I get down to the page. It might be an interesting thing to consider a technique called regioning. You might want to reach out to your advertiser where you could put more ads on the site if the site is long enough. Right. You also look at your analytics to see how many people are actually scrolling down to the bottom of the page, and what is the viewability metric of this ad. If this is never seen, it might not be in a good position, and you might want to place a little bit higher where users are actually visiting your site, right? And maybe also consider that that you might want to work with a leaderboard here, or maybe halfway down the page, that it's a little bit better position on the site. So experiment. I wouldn't say, to answer your question, I don't think that there's too much AdSense in comparison to your content. I do think that there may be some optimization techniques around here, as we've just been talking about. Second question is from Jochem. What is the current status of advertiser support for HTTPS? Should we expect lower competition and lower RPMs when running HTTPS? At the moment, there is no support for this, although there is, of course, the Help Center articles that you can follow to be able to find the right information for this. I think what's important is to consider that HTTPS is blocking certain users from coming to your site, and so therefore is also blocking the competition on there. If you are noticing that there are lower RPMs, then do experiment with different pages on that. Furthermore, I've got a staggering RPM on the ad size 336 times 280 on mobile, more than twice as high as the 300 by 250. You don't mention the size, however. Why is the 336 times 280 so much higher in my case? Well, so the reason why it's so much higher is because we're also able to target 300 by 250 ad units within this slot. So of course, yes, it is, this could be also the fact that your users are targeted more by remarketers or by people that have got automated targeting on. So it could be also very specific to your site. I think that this is a brilliant example, though, of why it's so important to experiment with different ad units. If you notice that there's a much higher RPM on this site, then this is a great learning that other publishers, and I hope that these sessions will also increase the community feel amongst publishers to be able to experiment with different ad units. Essentially what we see here is a bigger ad unit will lead to higher RPMs because we have more competition to target this type of unit. I would definitely suggest other publishers to also experiment with this size. The reason why we haven't named it today is simply because we're focusing on particular products. But of course, the gist of the entire story is bigger ads lead to higher RPMs, and so try to experiment with that as much as possible. Another question I've got over here is I've got around 8% invalid clicks. Is this normal, and how do I fix that? Invalid clicks are something that is uniform across the web. You can consider that invalid clicks are generally trafficked by bots and things that are out of your control. So I don't think that this is like abnormal. This is definitely a normal statistic, and even probably on the low side. So I would not worry about that at all. It is, though, something that, of course, could lead to frustrations because we do deduct the invalid clicks a month later. So, of course, make sure that this is something that you take in consideration when billing comes. There is nothing that we can do about it. Unfortunately, this is something that's uniform across the web. So, another question. When using Google's page speed tool, by far the biggest culprit of a slow site, often in AdSense, is there something in the works to address this? Would turning off ad networks improve this? I'm just going to... When using the Google page speed tool, by far the biggest culprit in slow sites often is ads. Oh, okay, I get the question. So if I understand the question right, you're stating that the biggest culprit of a slow page is AdSense. Is there something that's being worked on to address this? At the moment, I can't answer that question. I don't know if there is something that's being worked on to address this. And no, I don't think that turning off ad networks would improve this. It would simply make your RPM lower. So I think that that's something we would have to come back on. I'll be sure to take it into the next Hangout on Air. And also, of course, follow up on the forums to be able to find more information on that. We'll be posting some information also related to these questions on the forum, the AdSense forum. So we'll be coming back to that with a few of these questions if there are some questions that I'm incapable of answering today. Ronald asks, if you place 6 ad units on one page, does it hurt your organics results? The Penguin updates say that too much ads will have a negative impact. Ronald, unfortunately, placing 6 ads on your site is is incompliant. I would not suggest to place 6 ads on the site because compliance will come by and make sure that these ad units are removed. I would place 3 ads on the site and keep it at that, and place them in positions that are best trafficked. AdSense will not have an impact on your organic results, apart from the fact that maybe too many ads will increase the bounce rate of your users and might also lead to lower user experience, and therefore could impact the way that your site is being monetized or being uplifted within the results. I have no further questions left. I do urge you to maybe, though, download the form. And also, what's important to consider is that we have 2 more Hangouts that are coming up, like I noted in the beginning. Okay, Ronald is coming back. I mean 3 ads and 3 link ads. Okay, yeah, no, so the link ads, they will not have an impact on the organic results. AdSense does not have an impact on organic results unless you're, of course, placing them on positions that is negatively impacting the usability of your sites for your users. So no, to answer your question, no. To come back to that, we have, of course, I can maybe just show you here at the broadcast page, we have the further training part of the page. So feel free to follow the further training part of the page. Here we have more information on the beginner guide to ad serving with DoubleClick for publishers. Also, we have further information on using yield management training. What we'll be covering in the ad serving part is setting up an account. How do you set up an account in DFP? I realize that it's a fairly complex product, but it is the next step in monetizing your platform if you're using enough impressions on that. What you can do with an ad server is essentially be able to target direct campaigns that are trafficked on your site. If you're using different networks on your site, you can now traffic these ads from different networks. Instead of hard coding them on the site, you can traffic them against one another in order to be able to get the highest CPM on that ad unit from different networks. So you can traffic AdSense versus, for example, a Rubicon or a Criteo or a Joomla or any other network to be able to get the highest RPM for that ad. So these, of course, are very interesting techniques if you are using different ad servers, or sorry, different ad networks, or have direct campaigns in order to set up this type of competition. If you are already doing something like this within DFP or within DoubleClick, what we can then do is start to look at, okay, how do we optimize to be able to increase this type of competition? And how do we make as much money as possible from the different networks that you're currently trafficking in order to manage your yield, which means making more money from your site, basically. So, at the end of the day, what we'd like to do here and what we'd like to do as Google is to create more of a community feel within Europe between different publishers and to be able to really maximize for all publishers and advertisers alike that the ecosystem grows itself and that everybody makes money and everybody is happy. So if there's no further questions, once again, I'd like to actually download the form. This would be great for our feedback, um, and also to be able to get as much as possible out of this. So I'd like to thank you for your attendance, and I look forward to seeing you at the next Hangout. Okay, have a good day.